Fun Convention TV and Florida United Numismatists welcome you to a glimpse of the Fun Show in Orlando, Florida. Join us as we discover all that the Fun Show has to offer in coin tales from the Bourse floor. Fun Convention TV welcomes award-winning journalist and author Miss Beth Deisher to the Fun Show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Miss Deisher, you retired as editor of Coin World after 30 years. How did you actually get started in numismatics, and are you a coin collector yourself?
Actually, I've never considered myself an active coin collector, although I came into coin collecting when I was about 9 years old. My aunt in North Carolina was a coin collector, and I helped her fill many albums and sorted through change, so I knew and understood what coin collecting was about. But I didn't come into numismatics until I was married and came to Ohio and went to work for a publishing house, Amos Press, and they also did daily newspapers. And I worked first for the Sydney Daily News, and then Margot Russell, the longtime editor of Coin World, came over and asked if I would be interested in joining their staff. And I said, "But Margot, I don't know anything about coins except how to spend them." And she laughed and she said, "I would like you for your editing and journalism skills, and we can teach you the numismatic side." So she said, "Come over and try it, and perhaps if you don't like it, you can go back to the Daily." And I joined Coin World and never looked back because it's always been so much fun. And what I love about numismatic publishing and Coin World and the whole community is every day you learn something. And you know, it involves history, it involves chemistry, metallurgy, politics, geography. It just, the whole world is encompassed in the coins that we use. So it's been a grand adventure.
They call coin collecting the hobby of kings. Did you find it difficult being a woman in a male-dominated business?
Well, I had begun my career in journalism in daily newspapers when there were very few women in the newsroom. And so it was not a hard transition for me going to coin shows and seeing predominantly men on the Bourse. I had been used to working in an environment that very few women were in. What I found was that actually women are in the hobby. Often smaller businesses would involve family, husband and wife, as well as their children. And then there are some women who've been great collectors, but they are fewer in number.
And you actually were instrumental in Women in Numismatics, WIN, the club.
Well, that happened at a Long Beach show where Teresa Darling and Mary Sylvain and Sandra Bamer and I were all talking, and they were interested in starting a group for women, and it was conceived really as kind of a professional development networking opportunity, because they looked around and they knew that there were women very involved in numismatics, but we felt it would be an encouragement, that camaraderie, sharing knowledge. And so we were the four people at the very first meeting, or it really was more of an idea session, and got going. And Women in Numismatics is now a very vibrant group, and it still, although they do a lot of educational programs, it still is very much in professional development and networking.
Oh, it's awesome, though. It's good. I love to see women on the Bourse, so I was happy to see that, you know. How has the numismatic hobby evolved since you became involved 30 years ago?
Well, I think we have seen an explosion in information. When I first came into numismatics, the way I learned about many things involved is Margot Russell, the editor of Coin World then, would give me a list of books to read during the week, and then we would sit and talk, and then I would travel and meet the authors and be at places where they shared research. And as information became available, we noticed that if somebody published a book on silver dollars would gain prominence. Somebody published a book on Washington quarters, then that followed. And as especially the internet came in the mid-'80s, as that evolved and more information became available to people, we have more people involved in coin collecting today. You don't necessarily see them at a coin show or an auction because they can learn about coins online, they can bid in auctions, they can be members of clubs and share information. So it has, I think, broadened in many respects, although sometimes you don't have that feel when you come to a show. Now, the Fun Show is one of the largest in the United States, and this is always a vibrant show, and people look forward to seeing friends and people involved in the hobby. But it's changed greatly over the last 30 years.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite numismatic story? Because you've written so many, edited so many.
Well, I think my favorite all-time story is finding the Walton specimen of the 1913 nickel. For years, people had assumed that that coin had been lost, and they really didn't know where it was. And in 2003, it was more in a publicity venture for the A&A convention that was going to be in Baltimore. An auction company stepped up and said, you know, we will guarantee if somebody can walk forward with the genuine specimen, it will be worth $1 million at auction. And everybody in the country and even around the world, I remember doing an interview with the BBC at 1:30 in the morning, our time. That story went around the world in a heartbeat, and everybody was looking for this lost 1913 nickel. And one of the heirs of George Walton contacted his local newspaper and said, I have a coin that years ago was said to be an altered date and not genuine. And the reporter in Roanoke, Virginia, called me and said, what do you know about this coin and the history of the 13 nickel? He had seen the AP story about offering $1 million. So to make a long story short, we were in contact with the family member and were instrumental in asking him to bring it to Baltimore to see if the experts, what they thought about the coin that the Walton family had in their possession for 40-some years, literally stored in a shoebox in a closet. And they determined this coin to be genuine and the long-lost specimen. And I think that probably, there are many, many stories that I worked on in the 31 years with Coin World. I think that was the most exciting because, first of all, we solved one of the great mysteries in coin collecting, in U.S. numismatics, but to see the joy on people's faces for 3 days, thousands of people lined up to come in the show to see that coin.
That's amazing.
And I was privileged to be in attendance last April when the coin was sold in Baltimore. The family held it for 10 years, and it sold for $3.1 million. I was in the audience when the winning bidder raised his hand, and I was able to keep in contact with the family members over the decade, and it was just a story that even today keeps on giving. There's so many
I think
aspects.
I've actually read things on the internet about that whole experience.
It was, and actually someone did a whole book about finding that coin.
Oh. Now, you have authored or contributed to 10 books, your newest being Cashing Your Coins. What compelled you to write Cashing Your Coins, selling rare coins you've inherited?
Over the years when I was with Coin World, I would get phone calls, and invariably it would be a widow or a family member who would say, we have these coins, we don't know what they're worth, we're afraid of taking them somewhere, afraid we won't get full value for them. What should we do with them? Well, in the early days, you were talking to someone on the phone, and they were expecting you to tell them what they had. Now, today it's a little more easier to do because they could send you a picture by internet. But I always felt bad because I couldn't spend hours on the phone with every person who asked that question. So I determined when I retired in April of 2012, the first thing on my list to do was to write a book for the non-collecting public. And there are many, many people who have inherited a collection. It doesn't have to be millions of dollars. Some of them maybe a few hundred, a few thousand, but they don't know what they have. And my book is a very simple how-to guide to identify what you have, determine its value, potential value, some strategies for selling, whether or not you should sell it to your local dealer, whether you should sell it for the bullion value, the gold or silver value of it, or whether it is indeed a rare coin. We have a whole section in the book that shows you pictures, large pictures, and gives you a little ID guide of the rarest dates in each series. And we also have an extensive section on appraisals, how to obtain a good appraisal, and how you would go about evaluating whether or not what you have inherited is something that you should have in an auction. And the intent is for people to understand what they have.
What treasure they've inherited and what that might be worth, because they don't know.
And oftentimes the collector has spent a lifetime. And what we found is many collectors really don't want to think about the fact that they one day will not be with us. And they can't bear to sell their collection while they're living. And so it falls to the next generation. And what I try to help people understand is when they walk in to any potential buyer, the first question they're going to be asked is, what do you want for this coin? If they don't know what the value is and don't have an answer as to what they were willing to sell that coin for, they are automatically disadvantaged.
Right.
And so we want to help them have confidence in what they're saying to a potential buyer. And I liken that to, you wouldn't sell a house or a car or any major thing that you value. You wouldn't walk into a potential buyer and say, I don't know what I have, but you pay me what you think it's worth. And oftentimes that's what happens with coins. Coins have value. Most are not rare, but there are some. I could tell you story after story where people didn't know what they have, and they're worth thousands of dollars. And some of these stories are very happy. Sadly, some are not. We find out after the fact. So I wanted to write a book for non-collectors, and it's interesting. Oftentimes, I've talked to people who say, yeah, it's worth a few $1,000s, but the memories, we're going to help our grandchildren. Or my son is interested in his grandfather's collection, and they become collectors themselves, because it is a hobby that's very interesting. But the premise of the book is we want to get the greater story about coin collecting out to the general public that doesn't have as much knowledge as people who collect.
Well, that's what it's gotten rave reviews, and people were like happy to have it because it's something that was geared towards someone that didn't know about coins and to know exactly what they have in that shoebox in their closet.
It always pays to get a second opinion and to find out what you have. And any person who has a collectible, whether it's coins, stamps, any rarity, it's your responsibility to know what you have.
Right. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to speak Fun Convention TV, and it's been just a pleasure. Very nice meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fun Facts Fast. You've been watching Fun Convention TV. Visit Fun Forums for fun show updates, videos, articles, photos, and more. Fun Forums, it just makes sense. This video is the property of Fun, Florida United Numismatist. Re-editing or use without prior consent is strictly prohibited.